Speak to Alex Schindelar about this. He's a geopolitical oil analyst on Europe, Russia and the Middle East, and the president of Energy Intelligence. He's joining us from London. Alex, very good to have you with us on Al Jazeera. So the Americans have so far failed to convince the Saudis and Emiratis to boost oil production. Will Prime Minister Boris Johnson succeed where President Biden has failed, do you think?
Well, it's a great question, a good place to start. I mean, it's no surprise that the Prime Minister has decided to go to the UAE and Saudi Arabia to ask them for extra supplies because they're really the only countries in OPEC and this OPEC Plus alliance that has the capacity to pump extra barrels. I expect, and what we're hearing is they'll probably get a very similar response to what the Americans have gotten, is that OPEC is not ready at this moment to add additional barrels above and beyond what they've already committed to do to this market. They're going to take a very steady and careful approach to this market, which is obviously very volatile and moving around quite rapidly.
The war in Ukraine certainly seems to have changed energy geopolitics. Do you think we're likely to see sanctions against Iran lifted and Iranian oil coming back on the market? And how would the Saudis react to that, you think?
Well, what we've been hearing is the deal's been very close. I think that's been pretty well publicized. There was a hiccup in the last week for a Russian request to make sure that Russia and Iran could trade in a post-deal environment. And that hurdle seems to be cleared. So, what we understand is there are not that many more obstacles that need to be dealt with. Mainly it's on Washington's side to decide if they want this deal. And it seems that the Biden administration does want this deal and they have the ability to make it happen. So I think there's a good chance that Iranian oil comes back to the market. The market could need that oil going forward. As I said, there's not a lot of OPEC countries that have spare capacity or spare oil to put on the market. And you asked about what the Saudi reaction would be. I think in this case, this particular case, they would welcome extra oil that would come back to the market because a lot of the other OPEC members, as I've said, really can't add extra barrels.
Interesting. Now, Saudi Arabia is also reportedly in talks with Beijing, China, to price some of its oil sales to China in yuan. Would that dent the US dollar's dominance of the global petroleum market?
Well, we've heard this for many years. I mean, obviously, the dollar is the dominant trade currency for oil. It's been that way for decades and decades. And there's always been an attempt to try to find another way to trade oil, especially if you are a country that doesn't want to be so dependent on the US government. That would be Russia in this environment and probably China. So China has been making moves to find other ways to pay for oil in currencies other than dollars. And the reports that we saw over the last 24 hours suggest that there is at least a willingness from the Saudis to actually think about paying in yuan. This would be a major geopolitical shift, let's be clear. But, we're just at the first part of this. I think the conditions are there to actually move in this direction, despite the sort of years of lack of progress here. So we'll have to watch this and see. If it does happen, it's a major geopolitical move.
Thank you very much for talking to us about this. Alex Schindelar joining us there from London.
Thank you.